Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is December the 9th, and thanks for joining me. You know, it is the Advent season, which is to say the lead up to Christmas, and every single day, just like an Advent calendar, I open the news, and our friends in our government give me a lovely gift. Today's lovely gift is the gift of the bronies. Some of you may not be familiar with a community of men who love My Little Pony. That's not something you knew about, but I did. I was telling some of my buddies in the Suspendables chat, our little group chat earlier, that some folks have adopted internet culture and they've joined it and they've realized that there are some dark corners of the internet. But I essentially grew up, I came of age during the time that the internet started. I remember the first internet cafes, the first internet chats. I recall being in this thing called the Irish Internet Cyber Chat when I was in high school. I could spend my free periods on there, like talking to people in Ireland and something like that. I know all kinds of weird stuff about all the weird fetishes and affectations of people on the internet. So it was no surprise to me to learn that there is, in fact, a whole culture of these people because I've been aware of them for years. My friend George Hill reached out and he said, "You cannot be serious." The guy's a brony. So in the tradition of online branding, Julie Kelly, who is spending a lot of time on Bannon and goes on Real America's Voice and some other sort of news programs and used to be a good regular guest of the Dan Bongino show, she has referred to Shawnee Kirkhoff as the Blaze Bomber. And that is the person that the Blaze Media and Steve Baker have determined to be their leading suspect for the pipe bomber on January 5th in 2021. Blaze Bomber. I propose that Brian Cole be dubbed the Brony Bomber. And then we'll just see which one of them has more evidence. We're not going to see Brian Cole doing like a totally normal thing that a guy might do in his car on January the 5th, driving around because the cell phone pings were dismissed in 2021 by the FBI. We're not going to see that, right? That wouldn't be the case. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I'm just going to tell you that. And also racism and Somali fatigue and a bunch of other stuff that I want to kind of cover down on. The world has not just stopped, even though it has for me in many ways. And the one thing that did stop was our normal downloading route. I download clips every single day. I catalog them overnight, and then they go into this thing called the Twitter download machine or something to that effect. It's a website I use, and it was not working today. So I'm going to have to use an alternative method of showing you guys clips, and I have a whole bunch of them, so we'll see how that plays out. I've also got a little bit of snark to get started. You guys are going to be shocked about that. Let's start off with a sponsor read from our friends over at My Patriot Supply. If you think things are getting worse, maybe they are. It's the Christmas season. One thing you might be concerned about is the possibility of running out of food, like the grocery stores, like we saw during COVID. The gift of food security can be an amazing deal from the friends over at My Patriot Supply. It's called the Buy One, Get Two Free. It's a Christmas special they're doing. And so you can prep yourself and you can prep those you love. Ain't that something? All month long, just like the FBI, they are giving out some gifts to you. If you want to choose to buy their emergency food kit for 1 month, you can get 2 free food kits to give as gifts. That's right, a 4-week emergency food kit supply for yourself, which prepares you, and then you can throw in these 2 additional 1-week food kits that you can give away as gifts. What's better than that? Make it the perfect gift for someone who has not paid attention, and maybe they need a little nudge in the right direction when it comes to preparing themselves for God knows what. These things will last for up to 25 years in storage, so it's not something they have to use right away, but you never know when an emergency will pop up and you might need it. Maybe you just get snowed in. Maybe the power goes out. This buy one, get 2 free Christmas deal. You're getting yourself squared away with a unique and meaningful Christmas gift for you and your friends and your families. Go to mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. That's mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Again, mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. There is a link as usual in the show description. If you were to scan down, you might as well leave me a comment while you're there. Let's get into today's program with a little bit of fun, a little bit of sarcasm, and yeah, some music. I've got some music for you too. You guys are going to be shocked. All right. Okay, so the one thing that occurred to me, I got a text message from a journalist from an outlet that you would recognize. And this person suggested that I might be getting a little bit fatigued in attacking our government agencies. Do you ever tire of that, Kyle? And I immediately remembered one of the most inspirational figures in my lifetime that continues to give me strength when things get difficult. And I think, do I have enough energy to get up this morning, this Tuesday, put my toes on the floor, put on my pants, get to work, and smash the bullshit narrative of the FBI? Do I have that? And I wonder, am I too fatigued? And then I remember these inspirational words.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me.
I don't feel no ways tired. I love the way that sounds. It always makes me feel so motivated. I'm just like, yes, the first female president of the America. That clip lives in my head. And seriously, if people ask me if I'm tired, that's where my brain immediately goes, because I have that weird, twisted, dark sense of strange humor. We're in the middle of doing some of the responses. Our lawsuit is ongoing, and the defense of free speech is something that we continue to do. And so I've got my attorney sending me this stuff, and they keep mentioning my sarcastic and tongue-in-cheek style in legal documents. And I'm like, me? Sarcastic? Nah, bro, that's not what I'm all about. Of course, we are a little bit sarcastic here. So I've got some fun stuff. Let's start off with this thing, which was kind of the controversy over the weekend, and I don't think it's out of place. Wisconsin Cinnabon worker was fired after a racist tirade against a couple. You're going to be shocked to find out that this is NBC News who reports it in this way. A video showed the woman telling the couple, "I am racist," and then directing racial slurs at them. What it doesn't show is the beginning of this sort of interaction. It's obviously clipped out. And apparently, for the full context, this woman was being dressed down because she would not give a Somali couple additional caramel on a Cinnabon. I think that if you're a Somali person and you are worried about racist white women who are attacking you as you desire more caramel on your Cinnabon, there's really only one solution that's going to make sure that you can be safe. Because these people, the Somali couple, went out and started a GoFundMe account to heal from the racism. Now, the woman who said the racist slurs also opened a Give, Send, Go account, the alternative. And so she was able to raise like $100,000 for being fired, which is probably more money than she made working for Cinnabon, if I had to guess. I'm just going to assume that the Cinnabon job is not all that highly paid. What I think is rather than trying to heal from the racism, the best thing that these Somali people could do, so they are not offended by women who don't wear hijabs, they can go back to a country where women wear hijabs, and I suggest they ask Cinnabon Mogadishu if they could just get more caramel on their Mogadishan Somali Cinnabon. Now, the portions, as you probably recognize, are skinnier at Cinnabon Mogadishu. But I do think that that would be the right place for them to go. That's where they should probably start with their problems. I've got kind of some coverage of this lady and this nasty sort of interchange. And here is a man who is going to break it down. I think his name is Andre Williams or Wilson. I have to double check. I had his name yesterday and then I forgot about it. Anyway, this is some interesting commentary. And that way you can get a little taste. If you didn't see this in the social media sphere, this is what she was talking about.
Somali fatigue is growing.
That's nigger. I am racist.
So idiot for
and
real.
you are a nigger.
You are an idiot. No,
I
I'm
am
not.
racist, and I'll say that to the whole entire world. Don't be disrespectful.
You ruin your life, by the way.
Oh, you're talking about
Bye.
respect? You're talking about respect? You are fired from this place, motherfucker. You're not gonna be working here.
Suck it.
Suck what? Look how you
Suck
fucking look
it.
like.
What's wrong with you?
What the fuck is wrong with you, you fucking ugly bitch? Get the fuck out of my
Ugly?
face.
Talking about ugliness?
It's come out that these Somalians were actually harassing her and intimidating her, and she got fed up and started to call them niggers. And of course, she was fired from her job, but she's raised $30,000 after it all. People don't like Somalians for a reason. They're rude, they're entitled, and they're incompatible with civilized society. They don't have a place here and don't belong in America. They show this every fucking day. And because that Somalians have learned from niggas, they've learned how to play victim too. Hopefully these Somalians get stripped of their citizenship and she can make it to $100,000.
So there you go. Something about having the music in the background, like some very gentle piano music. How nice. So this is the story NBC News was reporting. And of course, she did get fired. And I think she has gotten pretty close to 100,000. I stopped looking in on it, but it was well over 90,000 the last time I looked. The Cinnabon spokesperson said that the video was deeply troubling. It is deeply troubling, actually, that people would decide to film themselves asking for something that they're not entitled to without paying for. And then dressing down. And the beginning of that little clip was talking about how she was sexualizing her body for not wearing a hijab. And they kind of cut that bit out a little bit to kind of hone in on the offensive part. It's an ongoing concern for those of us who have lived around it. I actually had this major issue. I was very much concerned about this exact interaction. Not that my wife would drop the N-bomb or anything, but when we were living in Northern Virginia, I had this concern. It was pretty awkward. We went to some malls, including in Tyson's Corner. If you guys know what I'm talking about, it's a very wealthy, not cheap area. It's not a cheap mall either. And we went to Tyson's Corner. We went to a mall, and it was on a Thursday or a Friday. And I think must have been before we had children. I think it was. And we were going there. I don't know what we were doing. We were like getting a jacket or something. I had gotten a jacket sized, and it was something for work. And so the two of us are walking in there, and we walk into the mall, and it is nothing but young Muslim youths. All immigrants, women wearing hijabs, young men kind of congregating around, taking up all the spaces of the food court and stuff like that. We walked in there and we were like, what in the hell is this? We're right outside the nation's capital, and it doesn't even feel like America. And we got leering looks from everybody because, God forbid, like my wife's shoulders are showing, and I don't know what the deal is. Very strange to kind of experience not America in America. And I think people that are in Minnesota and are in Wisconsin like this, they're fed up with it. The fatigue is real. And even people who came to this country who have accents, who had to get naturalized as citizens, the reasons why people don't get mad, like you don't hear a ton of people screaming about a lot of different cultures. It's pretty specific about the ones that they're frustrated with. It's because they didn't assimilate. The ones that came here and did American things right away, like start businesses and, join our churches, and they show up right next to us. We had tons of Filipino people in the churches that I was growing up in California. Same story. It turns out a lot of Vietnamese people in the churches that I grew up in Texas. By the time I'm 10 years old, we had a very heavy Vietnamese population. It was like, oh, well, they have the same worship as we do. Maybe they have a Vietnamese mass one time on the weekend, but generally speaking, they assimilated. They drove cars. They looked like us. They sounded like us. They learned how to speak. By the time you have the second generation here, the first generation born in America, they speak without an accent. This is a guy kind of saying, why is it that we have to just be so gentle to a culture that clearly doesn't assimilate and doesn't want to be part of it? And it sounds even more powerful for me because he's clearly an immigrant and came here and adopted what we think. And he even swears like an American.
Since when the fuck did we have to bow down to certain communities? Look, I'm Asian, I'm Vietnamese, okay? When we have our own communities too, and our communities thriving. We have businesses. We've been here only, less than 50 years after the 1975. Our communities are thriving throughout the United States. If you look at our numbers, there's only about 2 million of us here in the United States. And out of that 2 million people that we have, majority of us have businesses, scientists, engineers, doctors, bright mind people that given back to this country more than we've taken. And we have never asked anybody to bow down or speak our language. Okay? Since when the fuck this stupid ass mayor of the little pirate motherfucking land pirate Somalian in Minnesota have to speak their language and apologizing for those motherfucking crook-ass pirates. Since when we have to do that? This is just a fucking crook, and he's a Jewish dude. What a shame, you know? What a shame. What the fuck's wrong with him?
I mean, that's pretty blunt, but the guys, I think that's probably more commonly understood than not, which is why we have this really weird moment right now where you've got a certain number of people with, call it suicidal empathy, call it just sort of progressive values and not being able to look into the second and third order effects. We're seeing people that are crying about it. This is a story that came from CBS. Is this CBS? No, sorry, this is an ABC story. Here's how immigration enforcement is affecting school enrollment. Well, the crazy thing is that if you guys were to look at it and you'd say, oh, okay, our tax dollars, which usually come from property taxes in a lot of states, that are funding the schools, and you keep getting these bond proposals. Where I live right now, last year, the people in my town voted down another $10 million bond proposal by the school. And they're like, we need more administrators and teachers and fill in the blank. And people went like, no, we don't want to spend more money on something because there's a really decent chance that the money we're spending is not actually going to the people that are paying the property taxes. It's not actually going to the people who have children in the school. It's going to people that came here illegally. And they came in under the Biden administration, but they've been coming in for decades, more and more. So they're looking at this in this like, well, how do we be the nicest way possible? But if you were to expand it out, it's not nice to the people who came here because they're getting subpar versions of America. You expand it a little further than that, you're screwing over the people that gave everything, and you're really screwing over the people which you'd think that the political left would, generally speaking, fall all over themselves to help. More immigration coming in that drives up the price of housing doesn't hit the upper middle class in the same way it does the lower middle class and the lower working class. The people that are most injured by the policies that these people are talking about, I've heard media personalities talk about it. Oh, if the price of gas goes up to $5 a gallon. Do you guys remember talking about that under Biden? The $5 a gallon gasoline possibility? Some people would no longer be able to drive. There are a huge number of folks that would have to look down and go, is this an essential trip for me? Can I actually afford to drive at $5 a gallon? And then there's people who are making enough money where it's like, that's really an inconvenience. But in fact, I'm going to still make that choice. I'm just going to bitch about it. The people that get most hit by inflation, by poor educational outcomes because you've flooded the schools with people that don't belong there, who get hit with all of these sort of impacts of illegal immigration. It's almost always the people that actually also end up voting, at least in the urban areas, they're voting for the left. They're voting for more of the same bad policies. It seems really illogical to me. Anyhow, this is how it is affecting school enrollment in some districts. The Trump administration's surge in law enforcement has created a chilling effect on student attendance. It makes no sense to me because students, unless they're just trying to play hooky, students should have nothing to do with it because they should all be legally here in the first place. But it does appear that preliminary data and attendance trackers show some districts do not show a large-scale enrollment plunge, but others do. In September, Donald Trump sent federal troops to aid immigration enforcement in Chicago. We've already seen the videos. We've covered it on this program, the stuff that happened in North Carolina, in Washington, D.C. The city's local law enforcement have always worked alongside federal agencies. And after it saw a surge in troops in August and September during a 30-day federal takeover, that's really good language, isn't it? Preliminary data shows that the attendance rate was within 1% of the same period. And yet, they're crying about it in certain areas because clearly illegal aliens move into the same spots where they know they can be safe. And all they do there is drive up the cost of certain things. They make individual housing more expensive for everybody. And I'll tell you this, from working in the DC area, especially in the surrounding suburbs, what we regularly saw was that the illegal aliens that were living there were doing something that was kind of diabolical. They would move 20 or 30 people into a regular 3-bedroom household. So what would otherwise be a rental single-family home where maybe you and your 2 kids and your wife would live, they would have 8 families in there or 4 families with a bunch of kids. And so they could afford to pay a lot more because they were paying less per capita per family. And it would actually end up driving up the cost of the housing in the area, and it would lower the quality of everything about it. And of course, you're putting a double drain or a triple drain or a quadruple drain on the education system if they send them to schools. And amazingly, the guy who used to be president thinks that he was doing a great job. They've trotted Joe Biden back out again. Guys, he's out on the speaking circuit. I've seen this clip of him talking. There's a couple of different little clips that came out. He spoke to the LGBTQ plus Victory Institute. This sounds like a way to launder more money. I'm making not an allegation, but just a casual observation that former presidents get paid a lot of money to go speak. And I'm wondering how much he got paid for this ridiculous thing. I actually think Joe Biden might actually believe himself at this point, which is kind of wild. All right, we're doing an alternative way of playing these clips, so let's make sure this thing comes through. I think you can hear the riveting words of the former president right now.
My dad used to say, it's all about, can you look your child in the eye and say, it's going to be okay. That's what we worked so damn hard to do during my administration. In those 4 years, we created 16 million new jobs. Unemployment dropped. Unemployment dropped to a 50-year low. We lowered the price of everything from health care to cost of college to junk fees and airline tickets and credit cards. We made a lot of progress. We had so much more we had to do to make life affordable for every American. My dad...
That's a hell of a pitch. Joe Biden said they made things more affordable, even though we saw skyrocketing inflation, and it went up by 9% in some months at a time. I think the cost of bacon doubled where I was. We stopped buying it. We stopped buying other products too. If you guys were wondering, like, hey, was he asleep? Yeah, he was asleep. Unlike Hillary Clinton, he is now feeling quite a ways tired, and this road has been quite long. It's an amazing claim to completely ignore the past reality and just say, yeah, everything's better, and I did it. That doesn't mean that the MAGA team did the thing that we thought they were going to do. There were three major things that needed to be done, I think. You needed to shut the border. That needed to happen. They needed to deport millions of people and immediately take sort of the load or the pressure off the American people that have been carrying these folks around. And we needed to de-weaponize the most dangerous parts of the government. We got 1 out of 3. That would be a failing grade, but I don't consider Trump's first president so far, or first presidency in the first year of it so far, to be a failure, because my friend's not in prison. And he's able to keep punching holes in government narratives. And maybe, just maybe, through their own sort of missteps and finding a brony who's autistic, who likes to wear Crocs, and accusing him of being the super sophisticated 5-year evader of the FBI pipe bomber, maybe they actually destroy themselves. Maybe. In any case, Marjorie Taylor Greene went out and did something over the weekend. You guys may have seen this. I wanted to cover the story because it's not outside of our purview to talk about what happens. I told you I thought MTG made a good jump. I'm not a big fan of MTG in general. I don't much care for what she has to say. I don't care for the way she says it. I don't think her values align with mine. But she did vote with Donald Trump 98% of the time, which gave her a lot of credibility to the people that put MAGA in their bio. I am not one of those people. She's a former MAGA loyalist, but she says that Trump's policies are not America first. I mean, obviously, a lot of the stuff that he's doing is not what you guys thought. When you heard the words America first, you probably just thought he meant America comes first. That's what I would assume. Like I said, I'm kind of more of an America only guy. And what we saw was something a little bit different. It was like America First TM. It was like a branded version of it. So it's not exactly what you thought it might be just on the plain onset by reading the words. MTG voted 98% with President Trump before her relationship with him fractured. And she's accused the president in a recent interview of forsaking his own base. I do think that is a case. There are spaces being held. There are discussions being had on other podcasts where people are saying, you know, what is MAGA? Who are we? What defines us? I saw all this quibbling last night about it. I was like, well, MAGA always had two meanings. One of them was people who sort of said, yes, I agree with the principle that America should be great again. And to do it, we're going to have to do things like get rid of some people. We're going to have to break some eggs. We're going to have to hurt some feelings. We're going to have to do the hard reality, kind of the difference between mom and dad in discipline. You know, mom says everything's okay. Not all moms, but a lot of moms, this is historically the way it went, especially in the 80s, where mom would say yes, and then dad would come in and be the disciplinarian. That was kind of a thing in a lot of functional households. Mom was the pushover a little bit, softer. I think now dads are more pushovers, at least on some things. I am. My son says, like, Dad, I want a cowboy gun. I'm like, yep, lever action, coming your way. What caliber are we going to get, buddy? But we thought that we were going to get sort of like daddy's home. That was the attitude. In fact, the White House has even been putting these out on social media. Daddy's back in the White House, which means that there should be discipline and some crying and some hard faces where we don't care. You think. Good cop, bad cop, mom, dad, masculine, feminine, yin yang. This is kind of like what we thought we were getting into. But the problem is a lot of the people that put MAGA in the bio, people that would define themselves or wear the hat, what they actually meant was whatever Donald Trump says today is good enough for me. And that's actually kind of a dangerous place to be. Mr. Trump has called affordability a hoax created by Democrats. I'm seeing this trend, and I'm going to play you a clip in a minute regarding the bomber situation. Donald Trump says things that he doesn't like are Democrat hoaxes. I don't know if that was like a focus group or if they polled it and maybe you guys saw, maybe someone called you up and was like, how do you feel about the term Democrat hoax? And you're like, oh, I think that's good for things that I don't like or not. But he said it about affordability. America is not that much more affordable. For those of you looking at gas prices, it's hit or miss, especially where I live. And gas prices are way cheaper where I live than most of you. In Texas, it's $1 cheaper on any given day than where my parents live in Arizona. It's probably $2 or $3 cheaper a gallon than where people live in California. I don't know what you're doing in California. Fix yourself. But there's clearly an affordability issue. Housing prices are still insane. For any of you who have been looking in the market, it's difficult to see. So what the heck are we talking about here? And to act like it's not happening and claim it as a hoax it's not. You can't gaslight your own base for too long. At some point, it'll fail. The affordability for health insurance has caused Green to side with the Democrats. I don't like that at all because the conservative position is what the hell is the government doing involved in health insurance to begin with? But if you're going to talk about like the everyman problems and people are talking, I talked to some people last night and they were telling me they pay $1,200 a person for health insurance, $15,000 a year, give or take. I said, what are you getting for that? He goes, not a lot. I go, why do you pay it? You know? So maybe some of the thing that has to be done is an assessment of how much responsibility do you want to take on yourself and how much you're going to give it to daddy government and think they're going to solve it for you. The conservative position is the government shouldn't be solving your problems. Even if they're trying to solve other people's problems, you just sort of opt out. I remember when I went 14 months without a paycheck from the FBI, I never once collected uninsurance, or what do they call it? Unemployment insurance. I never got a paycheck for unemployment when I left the FBI. I just didn't. I didn't even think of it, honestly. It didn't even occur to me. I had money invested. It was feeding me. And we went out and just got after it. I don't think Garrett O'Boyle did either. And I'm pretty sure Steve Friend didn't either. We'll have to ask him. We never thought to rely on the government. And there is a position that says that. In any case, this whole interview is kind of interesting because people think that she's betraying the base and the people that are like 100%, no matter what Trump does, he's my guy. It doesn't look good. It doesn't work out well. She said she never imagined she'd be standing with Democrats on the Affordable Care Act subsidies. I don't think we should be subsidizing healthcare. If it's affordable, why does it need government subsidies? Oh, wait, that's obviously what happened. This was always redistribution. She's the only member of the Republican Party. She obviously has stepped away. She managed to get her pension. I don't hate her for any of that. She did increase her net worth by a lot by going to Congress, so a lot of people can make that point. Again, she's not my favorite, but I do think she stepped out from a losing team, at least as it looks right now, and there will be a loss in the midterms because of the way this has gone down. Because the problems are not being solved. And if you don't solve the problems in front of you, you're not going to have a good outcome. Like these people on the left, they don't miss. For whatever it's worth. I said it the other day, someone clipped it out, and I appreciate the clip. I actually get a kick out of it when you guys do it because I don't have the attention to do it. There is no question in my mind that this is a game for keeps and that the left, when they come back around, they've seen the indictment of Comey that failed. They've seen the attempt to put Letitia James in her place, and I don't know if that'll be successful either. And they're like, okay, so you got John Bolton and no one else, and you can't even get Jim Comey? You haven't gone after Ray or any of the other people that we think were involved in weaponized government. The reason is because what they did was legal. That's the real problem. You think the left misses? They barely missed shooting Trump in the head, right? They actually got a conviction in New York that has been stayed, and we've sort of just ignored the fact that he was convicted on the political right. We don't worry about that. It is a failure to assume that this is the status quo from now on and everybody is safe because 2024 won and we saved the country. We have a quiet, resting, storing up energy, watching for weakness enemy inside of the federal government, a coiled snake, if you will. And they're just going to bide their time. That's what they do. They're patient. When the midterms change, Trump will be embattled for the next 2 years. We've got about a little bit less than a year left for that, or a little bit more than a year. I guess it starts in January of 2027. That's when the new Congress comes in. The midterms are over. You're going to just see the guy screwed. He's going to constantly be fighting uphill. And he's already seeing stupid things like we're hearing arguments on the Supreme Court. And I want to play you guys this after a quick sponsor read. There's an argument being made by the leftists on the court, which, by the way, Biden put in at least one of them, right? Not the smartest person on the court, probably the dumbest person on the court. The argument is that there is a requirement that the federal government have executive functions that are independent of the executive, the chief executive that we elect. That's the left. That's the left telling you what they believe. They actually do believe that the government is meant to stand alone and that the president is not supposed to be in charge unless their president is. They don't miss, and they stack it up. And they're out there fighting this tooth and nail. We're going to play you a couple of little clips from the Supreme Court arguments. Essentially, the question is, can the chief executive, the Article 2 powers, where all the executive power is vested? I don't know. I've read the Constitution. That's what it says. Can that person actually be in charge of the executive? And the Supreme Court is actually doing their best to fight back against it. At least the liberal side of the court is, which is nuts. And to hear them say it out loud is even more nutty. So I'm going to let them say it in their own words. Before we do that, let's do a quick read from my friends over at Silent. It doesn't matter whether you think it's government or whether you think it's big tech or whether you think it's anybody else that may be wanting to get access to your data. Somebody is trying to get it because your phone is a tracking device. That's why I keep mine in here during the show. I also keep it in here during dinners. When I'm doing my job, I'm doing it less and less because it's been such a wild last couple of weeks. But government agencies, big tech, corporate data brokers, cyber criminals, take your pick. They all want a piece of that digital footprint. They all want a piece of where you've been and what you do and what your habits are and how you do it. They don't have to ask for it. They just take it. Most of these user agreements will allow them to. Your phone data should belong to you, but in fact, it actually belongs to whoever can collect it. And that's why we have companies like Silent. It's SLNT. It's silent without all the vowels. They exist because they make great Faraday products that block wireless signals. They are not the cheapest product on the market. They are a good product that actually works. Having bought the cheapest Chinesium garbage when I was in the FBI and testing them and them all failing, we ended up just using tinfoil and ammo cans. If that is not an elegant solution that you care to be walking around in your corporate environment or around your house, or if your wife thinks it's really ugly, which it really is, if you can't get away with doing that in the trunk of your bureau car, maybe you check out Silent and you just fire and forget and get something that works. It blocks all wireless signals like cellular and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and GPS and RFID and near-field communications and whatever else comes out of that damn phone. No signal means no tracking, no remote access, and you guys can save 15% with my name. It's slnt.com/Kyle. You'll see a couple of things we use there. I use their dry bag, which is a great option if you're traveling and you might be going into the rain. It's the raining and the snowing season right now. You can check out their smaller stuff if you guys want to get something that just puts it out of pocket. They make some really neat carry bags, like they make a little like a waist back, which would be a pretty good little Christmas gift. And you can do one of two things. You can either block the RF from going into your body, which some people worry about, and so it actually is a shield between you and the phone, or you can put the phone in completely silent mode. Both are really great, so you can stay on the grid when you want to at your choice. Drop your phone in a silent Faraday sleeve and get off and be silent and be invisible to the clowns that are trying to attack you. If you guys are so inclined, there's a link in the show description. I 100% endorse the products that I've used, and I've got about 8 of their products. Again, not cheap, but very good. So if you're the kind of person who wants to get a gift that somebody can really appreciate, like how well it's made and designed, look at my friends over at Silent. And this backpack you're seeing on the screen is outstanding. I actually showed it off to Clint Russell the other day when we were talking about bags. He was like, "Oh yeah, okay." Anyhow, let's keep going a little bit. I want to do this crazy bit from the Supreme Court. It is actually pretty crazy. I'm going to leave this on the screen in kind of a funky way. All right. This is Ketanji Jackson Brown, or Brown Jackson, however she goes. She claims that the president has no right to fire experts. She thinks that experts should be the ones that run the government. This is essentially the claim she's making. And it is a wild claim. Again, Article 2, that's where all the executive power vests. This is my problem with the Capitol Police, why I don't think they should exist. It's confusing to me that you can have executive authority that exists outside of the stated authority that the Constitution gives them. Article 1, legislation. You get to define things. You get to divvy up money. Article 2, you get to execute and do. How would it be that you could have the Article 1 cede power that is not theirs to an unaccountable, independent, expert-run government agency, and nobody would have any say in that? That seems expressly and on its face unconstitutional, but that's what's going on. This is Trump v. Slaughter and the dumbest Supreme Court justice talking.
Some issues, some matters, some areas should be handled in this way by nonpartisan experts. That Congress is saying that expertise matters with respect to aspects of the economy and transportation and the various independent agencies that we have. So having a president come in and fire all the scientists and the doctors and the economists and the PhDs and replacing them with loyalists and people who don't know anything is actually not in the best interest of the citizens of the United States. These issues should not be in presidential control. So can you speak to me about the danger of allowing in these various areas the president to actually control the Transportation Board and potentially the Federal Reserve and all these other independent agencies? In these particular areas, we would like to have independence. We don't want the president controlling. I guess what I don't understand from your overarching argument is why that determination of Congress, which makes perfect sense given its duty to protect the people of the United States, why that is subjugated to a concern about the president not being able to control everything. I mean, I appreciate there's a conflict between the two, but one would think under our constitutional design, given the history of the monarchy and the concerns that the framers had about a president controlling everything, that in the clash between those two, Congress's view that we should be able to have independence with respect to certain issues should take precedence.
Well, that's a hell of a claim. If only we had a document that would be something you could go back to and decide whether or not. Do they ever use the word nonpartisan? Let's do nonpartisan in the Constitution. No, that doesn't exist. What about partisan? Is that a problem? Partisan. That's also not in the Constitution. What about independent? Independence is stated, but nothing about an independent. Let me see. Actually, there's two other instances. Let me not lie to you guys. Nope, that's the declaration, and that's also things that are just on the website. Nope, it turns out the word independent, there's no such thing. What about experts? Maybe experts. They must say something about how the experts are supposed to run things. I should have done this before. Oh, there's 0 instances of the word experts. What about experts? No, not there either. Okay, let's just look. Article 1, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which will have 2 houses, and they name what they are. Let's go down here to Article 2. The executive power. Is it all the executive power? It turns out it's all the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. Huh. Weird. How is it then that this woman wants to make an argument that Congress should be able to cede power, which is not vested in their branch, to somebody else who's an independent, who's an expert, because of the monarchy or some other such thing? Yeah. The people who founded the thing didn't want a president who was a constitution. They didn't want a constitution to create a monarchy. They didn't want a president who was a king. But they also didn't say that unelected bureaucrats, they seem to have problems with the bureaucrats. That seemed like why we went out there. This is Andrew Branca, and he is doing sort of making fun of Elena Kagan, which is kind of amusing. He refers to as Alina, never been married, never had kids. Why do you ask, Kagan, in this clip? And I'm going to play this, his kind of like jutting in. And again, this idea that there's such a thing as an independent executive agency is absurd. At least it is to me. I don't understand how you get away with making the claim.
But for the mine run of these multi-member executive agencies, they're clearly exercising executive power. They're doing stuff that the NLRB does, that the MSPB does.
So how about those two? So you are here saying the NLRB goes down, the MSPB goes down, notwithstanding that they do all their work, or almost all their work in.
They go down like they'll be destroyed. They would still exist. The question is, does the president get to choose who heads them and exercises his executive authority?
judicial type proceedings.
I wouldn't say goes down. I would be say they were restored to democratic accountability and the constitutional structure. But we have contended on the
current versions of those agencies goes down.
We have challenged those in this court, NLRB and MSPB, and there are others. This court in state of law. I mean, there's various lists out there.
How about inferior officers?
We haven't challenged any restrictions.
Ketanji Jackson's trying to butt in. House CERN before. I don't understand. Can you explain? I don't understand.
They're making the argument, they want to go all the way down, sort of the let's get down to the granular minutia. If you apply it to this, that the agency is not independent of the president, then are all the inferior officers? And at the end of the day, I think the argument actually is yes, although they're not making that argument today. I don't know how you think otherwise. Literally, you just go back to the Constitution. How about Article 2? It seems really, really straightforward. I'm not crazy, I don't think. Let's just read what the words say. They can't go anywhere else. The executive power is vested in the President of the United States. If it's an executive agency, if it involves doing an executive function, how could it be something else? But all this clip actually ends up proving, I guess, is that politics is show business for ugly people and sometimes ugly voices. Those are atrocious things to listen to. All of that is really, really bad. So in any case, it's just a strange time to be in where we are hearing these arguments. I got one more here, that it might be that in the best interest of the American people for certain issues to be handled by experts. That's a claim that I don't see you being, I don't know how you make that claim, because we don't put experts in. We put people that represent us. A lot of times it's just people that we like the way they talk. Hence Donald Trump, expert on all these things? Definitely not. Got people to vote for him? That's what it's about.
Let me ask you about Justice Kagan's invitation to expound upon comparative risks. I don't know if we got back to that, but before you do that, let me just also focus in on Justice Kavanaugh's question about losing on the merits and the extent to which the answer would be just striking down the 4-clause removal protections. I mean, I appreciate that, but doesn't that create pretty significant risks with respect to the missions of the various agencies? I mean, it's not just we don't have 4-clause removal and the agency continues. That would then, I think, open the door for the president to come in, each new president, and clean house in terms of all of the individuals who are running that agency, notwithstanding their expertise and knowledge and experience and the things that they are doing to promote the mission of the agency. And presumably the president could install whoever he wanted in those positions, and that, I think, creates risks. So
I don't know where these risks come from, but by the way, what she's saying is of course the case. How nuts is it? Like, how dumb is it that we have to have someone who went to law school and went through this entire process and can't grasp that the president should be able to come in and run the executive agency because it has all the executive power, and that's what executive functions are. Wait, the executive gets to decide what the executive does? Yeah. And so this is the craziest part about judicial review, especially the way that we have it now, especially with these activist judges, which is what he has not solved. For whatever it's worth, this has not been solved. And this morass is going to continue, and it's going to haunt the Trump administration all the way to the end. Because you've got these dim-witted bulbs. This is one of the major, probably lifelong consequences for me of the Biden era. We're going to have this lady saying things that are completely illogical just from the basic reading. She didn't have to read a bunch of case law. Go back to the original text. The first sentence of Article 2 explains what you want to know. We're going to have risks because the president might come in and gut all the top of the executive agencies and put it in his own people? Yeah. There's no guarantee. Like, none of these executive agencies are defined. They're not defined in the Constitution. Anyhow, I get blown away by how stupid some of this stuff is, because they're in here like quibbling about minutia. And this is why lawyers are really frustrating to us who have just regular common sense. We're like, wait a minute. No. On its face, it is a ridiculous question on whether or not the president can fire people that work under the agencies that answer to the president. No, it doesn't stop them. But I guess that's just the nature of the beast when you consider what people do actually take in. I might come back to this clip. Russell Brand and Candace Owens have this little 2-minute exchange that I held on to, and I don't know why I thought it was fascinating, but it's fascinating that it actually resonates with enough people. I don't think Candace Owens is a good actor. I don't think that she says things that are intelligent. I don't think Russell Brand says things that are intelligent, but they sound good. He's kind of Ketanji Jackson Brownish. He says a lot of words, and he says them in a relatively articulate manner, and he says them with an accent, which is quite charming. And then you're like, but what did you even say? And did it even mean anything? Sometimes he hits it. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he sounds like a goof. That's one of, and this particular clip that we may play seems to have that sort of instinct for me. So, we're living in a dangerous time because of this stuff. We're living in a time when I don't think that there is any room for screw ups. And so maybe what you wouldn't want to do is unforced errors. I'm going to show you an unforced error. It's right here. That's Neil Team 6. If you were just listening, in fact, now's a great time to plug it. If you're just listening, you're missing out on the best part, some of the video. We actually do some work on the video end here. I think it's enjoyable. 1,000% more people are watching our video on Spotify than they were last year. So thanks for joining us on Spotify. We were a top 5%, like a 95th percentile video podcast on Spotify last year. We're a 99th% video podcast this year. So join us over there. If you're listening in any format and you're not on Spotify, you're missing out on the part where you can click between and see what I'm talking about occasionally. KyleSerafinshow.com. That is the sort of redirect for you. You can also join us over at KyleSerafin.com with locals, which allows us to continue to operate even if everybody pulls their support. Both of those are very, very good places to go for us. Otherwise, if you're watching on YouTube right now, how many are watching right now? Like almost 800 people watching on YouTube. That's pretty cool. Give us a thumbs up. Same thing on Rumble. You guys on Rumble are starting to creep back up in numbers again. Maybe they've taken their boot off our neck. Make sure you're liking these videos. Boost them up in the algorithm. If you're new to the program and you guys haven't been here before, we welcome you. I'm seeing a lot of people in the comments saying that, and you've come from Clint Russell's show, and maybe you've come from InfoWars, or you've come from somewhere else. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you giving me a chance to listen, and hopefully this is adding some value to you. Let me add the value that we have the extra special expertise in, and it is right here. This is Neil Team 6. I know about 8 of these people by name. And apparently, they've decided that being fired 4+ years, maybe 5 years after the inciting incident is not fair. And I tend to agree with them. It's kind of like punishing a child. Some of you guys have tried to, I get chastised for this. Dad comes home from work. Let's do the dad and mom analogy again. Dad comes home from work, maybe a business trip where he's been out of town for like a week. And on the Monday of the week, fill in the blank, young boy does bad thing number 1. And mom told dad about it. And dad's been holding on to it since he gets on the plane, he flies back home from business. There he is, boom. And he says, I am now going to punish you, son, for the thing you did 5 days ago. I know you're 4. I know that you have no sense of temporal understanding and like you can't figure out what the hell happened and how this punishment is connected to that bad deed you did 5 days ago that you've already forgotten about. This is the problem. If they had taken swift action, which they couldn't have done because Chris Wray was in charge. If they had taken swift action against these people for this tactically unsound, politically inappropriate action, then it would have been fine. And you probably could have terminated them on site for that time in 2020 when this happened. This was like June, July of 2020. This was inherently dangerous because taking a knee while you're armed in front of a potentially dangerous mob, which is what they claimed, is unacceptable. It's also unacceptable because it made it dangerous for me as I went out a couple hours later to go walk around in the same area. Now you've set a precedent that FBI agents will kneel for your political BS. And we don't accept that. But more importantly, they were actually not under duress and they were not surrounded and there was not a violent mob. These were a bunch of people that were like 75 feet to 100 feet away from them. And they were just kind of, generally speaking, cheering at them. And these people, including supervisors, multiple supervisors, some of whom got multiple promotions. If you look in the middle of the screen right now, you'll see Sarah Linden. She's the heavyset gal. She, from what we can tell, is Jane Doe number 5 in the lawsuit because they all fired a lawsuit. And when I say Jane Doe, I mean D-O-U-G-H, Doe. Jane Doe, we ate too much dough. Jane Doe in the lawsuit is involved in suing the Trump administration, specifically suing Bondi and Patel, because this was an improper action. It was a bad employment action. Guys, we actually told Patel how to solve this problem a long time ago. We being me and Steve Friend, who was sent home yesterday after they said, we can't give you anything that make you an agent, but you're on the payroll now. But you're also not on the payroll, and we can't have you come in, but you can come in, but don't come in, and don't spend too much money because we don't have a credit card for you to fill up your gas card, but here's a car. So take the car with the gas that it has and then try not to use it. By the way, why don't you take the rest of the year off? Use your leave. Don't come back in for a bit. So he's okay. Steve Friend's okay, but we probably won't have him on the program for a little bit. He doesn't need to poke the bear any more than he did. How many people go on a podcast on Friday afternoon and on Monday morning they get brought in for the first time in 3 years to the FBI? The answer is none. Steve Friend is a legend. All right, this is a federal civil lawsuit that was filed on Monday, yesterday, with a dozen former agents seeking their job back, claiming that they were fired during the Trump administration for their efforts in 2020 to head off a riot in the wake of the George Floyd killing. The facts are not in their favor when it comes to this, as far as heading off a riot and stopping things that were dangerous. But the FBI will, in fact, back that up. And of course, they substantiated it at the time. And the FBI executives who were backing their play, and that includes people like Larissa Knapp, who ended up being the executive assistant director of the National Security Branch, and the deputy director, and Chris Wray, who came in and gave some of them hugs, they all substantiated their position. So to switch it up this time, it was a mistake. Those people should not have been in positions of authority. They certainly should not have been promoted the way they were. Sarah Linden, the heavyset gal that we saw, was promoted to deputy assistant director, which is one step behind the number 4 people. It's a very high level position in the FBI, to the point where, funny story, I once met a deputy assistant director when I was doing surveillance, and we were doing like the dog and pony show. Anybody who's been in the military knows what a dog and pony show is. The general, the colonel, whatever, your base commander comes in and wants to see what your unit's up to, so you clean everything up. And I used to do those all the time because my boss didn't like him. My boss's name was John Nance, and he was a lazy piece of garbage. So he would send me over to do the dog and pony show, which I didn't mind because I don't care about talking to strangers. So they'd send me over there, and this woman comes up to me, very handsome woman, 50 years old, blue suit, thin, kind of tall, and she's some kind of special assistant, something or other. I don't think she was an agent. She seemed like an admin type. And she said, okay, well, the following people are going to be here, and we have this, and we have that, and we have this, we have the DAD of so-and-so, whatever it was. I don't remember. And I go, okay, cool. Yeah, got it. Okay, whatever. My presentation's always the same. So I did my presentation, and I explained what it was. And then she comes back, and she was like, and I said something like, pretty crass probably, or kind of like blunt, because I just don't really get that excited about people's titles. And she goes, do you know who that was? And I'm like, yeah, I think that was Chris, because he introduced himself like Chris. He comes up, DADs, everybody that are a senior executive in the FBI, especially under Chris Wray, they would go out there and they try to be like a cool guy. They come up and be like, how's it going? I'm Brian. And you're like, okay, Brian, like, I don't know what your position is, so I'm not going to call you sir. I'm just going to call you Brian because you introduced yourself as Brian. I'm Kyle. That's how we would do it. I just don't care. So we would go this back and forth. This guy comes up, she was, let's say his name was Brian. And she was like, do you know who that was? And I was like, yeah, that was Brian. And she was like, no. Brian is a DAD. And I was like, right. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I'm a DAD too. Yeah. I got 2 little girls. Yeah, we should have a lot in common. That would be no problem. No problem. Happy to meet Brian. She was like looking over at my colleague. Does he know who they are? There's this weird reverence inside the FBI once you get up to the SES levels, the special agent in charge, the DAD, stuff like that. I don't get it. I got to tell you, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I never understood it. I never understood like worshiping people for title, but it's a big thing in the FBI that you're kind of untouchable once you get into the SES ranks. Sarah Linden was one of them. She got promoted to DAD. She was in charge of Russian counterintelligence, if memory serves, and she got fired. She shouldn't have been there in the first place, to be fair. But this lawsuit, I don't think is going to go well for the Trump administration at all. I think it's going to go really poorly. I'm going to show you it on the screen real quick. They've named Kash Patel, yet another unnecessary distraction when they should have been doing the right thing. They instead went out there and tried to do some petty grievance thing and thought that by firing a bunch of people for a headline was going to be really effective. And the fact of the matter is that these headlines are just going to get them mired in legal BS for the next, decade. This is something talking about the First Amendment, says you can't get rid of them for partisan reasons. By the way, this lawsuit would have been really nice for those of us who were fired under COVID. Political patronage, where public employees hold their job on the condition they provide in some acceptable manner. Support for the favored political party is unconstitutional because no official, high or petty, can prescribe what orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion. That's from Elrod v. Burns. 1976. You know what's real wild about these things? When you start reading, like, the Democrats suddenly have principles and they want to go out there and talk Constitution. This is the same Democrats that hope that like a Ketanji Jackson Brown is going to be their judge. Where the hell were you guys in 2020? Where were you in 2021 when we were making a strong religious argument and saying that we shouldn't have to be, subservient to a political agenda of a president. I actually do believe that people should be able to leave their politics at home, and I don't think that you should be fired for your politics. But that goes both ways. None of you people gave a rat's when it was us getting tossed out, and now suddenly they're crying about it and they're suing. And they're going to act like this is it. The bedrock constitutional protection for public employees preserves George Washington's vision of a common government. Really? They all wrap themselves in the flag when this stuff happens. Anyway, I think it'll be successful. But whatever it's worth, I think the people that got fired, that were in this picture, that were dropping a knee and doing something dangerous and illogical, they should have been moved into posts that did not matter. They should have been put places in the broom closet. We used to say being commander of the broom closet was what you did with people who were no good. They actually had a position at the Washington field office where all these people worked. And it was the supervisor of a squad of no one. It was called the SSSA, I think, or something like that. Or SSAS, I don't remember. It was literally a supervisor level position, a GS-14 supervisor position where you were in charge of like data, but not people. And they would just give a presentation once every quarter. It was a penalty box timeout for people that were a GS-14 and they didn't want to demote them. The Bureau never got rid of people, and they certainly didn't get rid of them by firing them like that. And it's not going to age well. I don't think it'll do well at all in the courts. It doesn't mean that those people shouldn't, have lost their jobs at the time. But I don't think they will now. It's just one more misstep in the nonsense that these people keep doing. So let me give you what you guys came for, because this is the best part of it. The story, like these are deliberate step on rakes, but it's not like someone else placed the rakes in the darkness and the FBI director, the deputy director, whoever is firing these people in HR. It's not like they didn't know the rakes were there. They put the rakes down themselves. Got into a little back and forth discussion, and I ended up going directly and talking to her. Brianna Morello, who's on InfoWars, and I think she's on right now, or she was on right now, like a few minutes ago. Brianna was kind of making the claim that that the Biden administration set up the guys that are currently in DOJ and screwed them over. And that is not what happened, people. If you go out there and you assess that you have now a new suspect that was previously cleared by the previous administration, and you set yourself up for failure, and you didn't know all of his backstory, and you rushed it together. Remember the sort of context of this. Let me play it if I can. We got John Solomon claiming that the entire relook and new look was a red cell organization. I can't stand listening to this man because he sounds like just a sycophantic piece of garbage. And I know that he's a snake, having dealt with him myself. He's always trying to con you. If you guys ever talk to somebody who's a real shifty character on the phone, John Solomon would call me up and try to act like he was like a shitty car salesman. And I was sitting there listening to him. It's like, you don't know as much as I know. You're acting like you know more than you do. Just because you have access doesn't mean you have understanding the culture. And so he's going to make this argument on Bannon. And I want you to consider, he's basically saying that just before Steve Baker dropped out the quote unquote Blaze Bomber story, the FBI had decided that they were going to take a new look at it. And then they were like, oh crap, we are screwed, because we are now caught in the fact that the government actually is involved. And for whatever reason, the FBI has been covering it up for the entire time that Patel and Bongino were in. So here's Solomon making the argument that how they solved the case. And he's acting like, oh, I knew all the things that were going to go all along. They got the wrong guy, people. I'm real confident of saying that. I'm going to show you why, because he's a brony. You know what a brony is? A brony is a dude who loves My Little Pony. And that story just dropped on the New York Post. We can't get more fun, Christmassy type stuff than the FBI arresting a brony bomber. Anyway, let's start with John Solomon, and we're going to move into the story about the My Little Pony, including some music.
Well, as I mentioned, I think it was just before Thanksgiving on your show, I thought there would be an arrest this week. They were zeroing in on a gentleman whom they arrested this morning in Northern Virginia. And the way this case was cracked was about a month or 6 weeks ago. Bongino, who was the lead on it, and Patel decided to take the old agents off the case and put a new team on it. Now, there was a little resistance, as there always is in the FBI, to any form of change. But the new team came in, they applied some new ideas, some new technologies, and some of the evidence that was sitting right in front of them with fresh eyes was followed, and it was able to be led to this gentleman who they arrested a little bit ago. We don't know much about his ideology or his intentions or his motives yet. And one of the things that FBI officials stressed with me this morning is that this is really the beginning. The arrest is the beginning of trying to understand how this operation was conducted, who's behind it, whether there are more conspirators or whether this is a lone wolf. Still all of that to be determined, but a really extraordinary effort. Almost
awful. Absolutely awful. I don't know why John Solomon, who's a print guy and was like an editor and was a writer, why he thought that he could convey things across in a visual medium the way that I do. He's got a lisp. He's not a good articulate communicator. He says a bunch of things. He has no power or gravity in his voice. Like all of the just the mechanics of listening to him are really difficult. And then the stuff he said was BS. An arrest is not the beginning of the story unless you're in like local law enforcement. This is a 5-year operation. This is a 5-year operation investigating somebody that did the most terroristic act in the biggest case that the FBI apparently ever handled. Right? Apparently, this case was the linchpin. It was cited in numerous sentencing documents. The danger that the pipe bombs brought about during that day was referenced over and over again by judges who were destroying the lives of J6ers. It's not the beginning of something. Nobody in the FBI arrests someone and says, we feel pretty comfortable that we got our man, and we think you're going to be comfortable with it too, as we figure out what he was all about. We don't know why he did this thing, and we don't really know that much about him. We use some new technologies like cell phone pings, which are not a new technology, it turns out. Ladies and gentlemen, cell phone pings, not new. Credit card receipts, not new. License plate reader, also not new. That's what they found it on. And so they're opening themselves up for this silliness and this embarrassment. DC pipe bomber suspect Brian Cole Jr. had a secret online life obsessing over My Little Pony. What? Yeah. The My Little Pony. Did you know that there's an entire subculture of men who just love My Little Pony? And they're known as bronies. And as I said, I kind of grew up in an internet culture. And so I know a little bit of something about what it looks like. And I understand that there are men that do this. And they're not, generally speaking, a particularly violent group. There's been some allegations that there's a crossover there. It's kind of, that's like the cosplay thing. You're seeing the people that go to conventions. The general brony is like living at home in his mom's basement, might be emotionally challenged, might be learning disabled. Might not be. Might just be someone who's just kind of socially awkward. People glom onto it. And they're looking at anthropomorphized horsies, as I like to say with my girls, that are really nice and friendly. And they teach messages about, working together. Does it make sense that grown men would like this? Not to me. Probably not to you. But they're out there. They're not, generally speaking, a violent type. I don't think they build bombs. That's usually not there's a pretty big crossover. There's a big gap between the people who are autistic and sort of move towards a childish fascination with an anthropomorphized feminine horsey figure. And I want to blow up things over an election that was unfair. And I started planning it 1.5 to 2 years before it happened. Do you guys get that? Here's some of the artwork that Brian Cole was apparently involved in. Childish, teenage. Man accused of attempting to blow up the DNC and the RNC in Washington, D.C. on January the 5th, 2021, was a highly active My Little Pony fan. They don't use the word brony, but I don't know why, because brony's a great word. The BRONY BOMBER. Brian Cole Jr., 30, was obsessed with the toys marketed at young girls. I have several of those young girls in my house, and they do like My Little Pony. Creating art of plastic pony dolls, remixes songs of them, and writing fan fiction dedicated to them. There was no sexual aspect to his end, for whatever it's worth. That's what's noted in this story. His works are spread across various social media accounts, and they link to his email address and his phone number. And there's one of them. One of his pictures is a pony holding a lightsaber looking thing, and it says, "I'm not quote unquote cute, I'm deadly." Okay. There's the mugshot, which is very unusual because you can see he's got his headphones in there. That's something you see some autistic people wear when they need to be able to do sensory deprivation or they're overwhelmed by environment. I've never seen a mugshot where someone got to keep their headphones. That kind of tacitly acknowledges if this is in fact the mugshot, and this says it's credited to the Department of Justice. So if that's his mugshot, and that's the picture they took when they went to process him, what it tells me is that they understood that taking those away from him would cause him to melt down, which means you're dealing with somebody who has a let's say an abnormal response to normal stimuli. How do you spin this? How do you spin this that a guy who loved Applejack or Apple Bloom or whatever the name of the horsey's name is, and Fluttershy, like That's the guy that went out there and built the bombs. It's childlike stuff. Again, there are some people that have it towards the sexual fetish, but I don't think it is. This is a kind of thing. I got an article about the subculture of bronies, but it says a man who's part of the My Little Pony subculture known as a brony. The community was, in 2017, large enough to hold annual conventions, and experts considered followers very sincere in their fandom. Yeah, they are serious about this stuff. I mean, like, it's not a serious thing to me, but they are serious about it. One of the expressions they use is welcome to the herd. You can find it on Urban Dictionary. It's a thing. It's weird. It's abnormal, but it's not violent. Not as far as I can tell. And links to it are very weak when you try to find people that are actually involved in the violence end of it. None of Cole's posts examined by the New York Post, who's writing the story, had any notable sexual connotations. Fan fiction story was authored by Shull Coates. It showcases him bringing together My Little Pony fantasy and horror. Apple Bloom's eyes snapped open as she sat up in her bed, panting heavily and sweat dripping from her red mane. The skeletons, the zombified ponies rising up from the ground, their decaying bodies and rotted flesh slid from their bones, he wrote, allegedly. She buried her face in her hooves, crying silently at the horrible images that inhabited her mind. He's a high school graduate. He's writing fan fiction about ponies with no sexual overtone. Guys, that's the guy that they think was out there doing this mastermind plot that got away with the got away from the FBI for what, almost 5 years? Just bad, strange. They quote Daniel, what's his name here? Daniel Chadbourne, assistant professor of psychology, who wrote the book Meet the Bronies, a psychology of adult My Little Pony fandom. The subculture of bronies was very online and unique and attracted a lot of male fans who were breaking gender norms, which attracted a lot of attention. The subculture was generally not sexual, he noted, adding, he isn't surprised that within the community, some members are in fact troubled. Someone who's disaffected is often going to look for spaces to engage in, to find a sense of identity and belonging. The toy company, Hasbro, which makes My Little Pony, did not immediately respond to requests for, like, what the hell would they have to say about it? Here's a talk, and I think this is done by Chad. I'll put this in the links for the show if you guys want to read it. It's worth doing. He wrote an entire book on it. New Mexico Highland professor will give a November 14th talk on his research and the book surrounding the brony culture. It's a mostly online culture, about 75 to 80% males. If you don't know, there is a female subculture that actually fits into this subculture. They're called Pegasisters. Yeah, that's a thing. People know. Just saying. They can sometimes attend conferences. They get together and they'll wear outfits and so on. BronyCon. What a mess. What an absolute freaking disaster. What an unmitigated, silly thing for them to find themselves involved in, these guys. Because how did they not know? Saying that this is the beginning, it's not good. And they're showing over and over again that they know less and less about what's going on. I'm going to give you 2 video clips. This one's Julie Kelly talking on Bannon, talking about the prosecutor that was chosen, who went after Enrique Tarrio, who's involved in Mike Flynn. We talked about that yesterday a little bit. Here's Julie Kelly. What I keep seeing is the MAGA people, the ones who are like doing the trademark MAGA, not who take the words at its face, but the people that do MAGA trademark, MAGA, TM, they make an awful lot of excuses for these guys who were supposed to be studs that knew what was going on and understood the problems and were going to come in and clean it all up, and they were after it. Why do we have to make so many excuses for people that are doing a good job?
These courts about the trials of the J6 people and President Trump and Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon and a host of Tom Barrack and a host of others. So you know this better than anybody because you were essentially an eyewitness to this. Now, you have also been, since Darren Beatty's in the government and Raheem's doing other stuff right now, you're really one of our lead watchdogs, if not the lead, on this whole thing with the pipe bomb. And you informed me last night, and I can't believe it because my head's still blown up from when you told me, that the FBI agents and the lead attorney, the prosecutor, on this case with the pipe bomber, is one of the worst prosecutors, one of the worst demons that were out there prosecuting the J6 folks. How could that possibly, Julie? You must have gotten this one wrong. Your track record's 100%, but on this one, Julie Kelly must be wrong. This can't possibly be true, can it, ma'am?
As I tell my husband all the time, of course I'm right. Yes, I'm right. I'm never wrong. Never. Unfortunately, I wish that this was not true. And I guess my only thought here is that the new leadership at the DOJ and FBI are not aware of who this individual is, Jocelyn Valentine, who was the lead prosecutor. She led the team of government lawyers, DOJ lawyers, who went after the Proud Boys. I covered that trial, right? I covered that in 2023. She is among the worst of the worst. When I was asked to help submit names of J6 prosecutors who should be fired, she was towards the top of the list. So I have no idea.
Julie, hang on. She treated the Proud Boys got a totally fair trial.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so they're going to be sarcastic, and she's being a little bit sarcastic, saying I'm never wrong. I actually think she probably believes that. That is a woefully ridiculous take from this woman. Why do we have to make excuses? Oh, they probably just didn't know. That may be true, but that seems like grounds for removal if you're that incompetent and you're not able to actually articulate like what's going on. How about a slightly more sensible take? People give InfoWars a hard time for being InfoWars, but having Viva on is significantly more competent, let's say, commentary. Now, here he is discussing what the possibilities are. None of them are good, by the way.
If what they're saying is true and no one believes it, it's a problem. If what they're saying, if they believe it, but it turns out not to be true, it's a problem. When you say, like, you know, maybe the Trump administration didn't know who this person was. Maybe Jeanine Pirro didn't know who this person was. They know now. And so if they don't do anything now, that's a problem. If they didn't know, that's a problem. If they did know, it's a problem. And some people are going to raise the argument that, you know, they need bulldogs who are going to go in there and really get that conviction. If you're getting that conviction through I won't say Brady violation, it might not be the right term, but through violating the rules of procedure that, you know, result in hiding exculpatory evidence, that results in an injustice that requires a pardon. If that's the type of bulldog prosecutor you need, you're screwing justice as well. And so there's no good reason for why this woman still had a job, how she ended up on this case. If they didn't know, it's a problem. If they did know, it's a problem. And
that's where we should leave it, because that's the issue. The issue is it's a freaking problem if they're putting these people in. And the problem is that it's predictably problematic. If you were thinking that you're going to go back to the old case file and find someone that was cleared, and it's your assumption that their clear wasn't good, you read the evidence and you're like, oh, Brian Cole wasn't the guy because following, you know, these following things. If you read the case file and you're like, okay, he had pings, he was in the area, they had some uncertainty, and then what did they do? They did a follow-up interview? Oh, they found out that he was on the move at that time and he didn't actually fit inside the parameters when they did more precise ping mapping. And then you went out there and then you have Dan Bongino smiling like a goofball and it's his birthday. And you're going to go get that guy for me. You think that's what it took? Was that really what it took? It just took Dan Bongino pulling the case agent aside saying, you're going to get this guy. It's going to happen. And the guy's like, okay, fine. Like, I'll serve you up some slop. Here, you want this? Run with this. Destroy your credibility. I might have seen some things, folks. This is probably like the most salacious part of all this. I might have seen some things that lead me to believe that they have the wrong guy. I'm not just saying this for no reason. It's not my story to share yet, but you guys know that we've shared some things before it happened. Let me tell you, I've already seen some things, and it is enough for me to I could take it to a DC jury and you can't convict this guy. Let me say that real clearly. Actually, that's really true. You could take the things that I have seen already, that I actually already have, and we could show it to a DC jury and they will acquit this guy based on reasonable doubt. Doesn't mean that he could have done it? Sure. But no DC jury is going to convict him. An autistic, black brony who has a stumbling gait, who wears Crocs, but suddenly also has like expensive sneakerhead sneakers and walks around looking like a stud, athletically moving around through Washington, D.C., despite the fact that per the FBI's own claims, he's been there like never. He's been there once per year. He's made one purchase per year in Washington, D.C. Who are you going to put your money on? People that don't know? Just saying. It's embarrassing. And the best little bit was Donald Trump calling it essentially a Democrat hoax, but it's not clear what he's calling a Democrat hoax. This is from yesterday. I'm not a huge fan of Lindell TV. I'm actually not a fan of Kara Casanova as a person. She and I had some tiffs. I think she's really lazy as a reporter. That's been my personal experience dealing with her numerous times. We did this long. Okay, let me justify that. We did a long interview, like 45 minutes long, about something. And it might even be about this case back in the day. She was very interested on the J6 stuff. And at the end of it, she said, can you just write up what you told me and give it to me in notes? And I was like, no. And she was like, can you just, like write what we talked about? No, you're a freaking recorder. You could have recorded the conversation or taken notes yourself. What the shit are you talking about? I'm not going to do your job. So anyway, I think she's lazy and that was the end of it. Like, you don't get to waste 45 minutes of my time where I give you my information and my analysis on something and whatever I know, and then ask me to write it up myself when you're a freaking paid reporter. So anyway, I think that's lazy, and I thought it was really disgusting. This is a bad question, like so many people don't know how to do. They go and they monologue a question to the president of the United States. How about an actual open-ended question? Sir, what's your take on the pipe bomb case that just went out? You got like 1 second to get it through. Anyway, she does a crappy question. Trump says it's more of a statement. Thank you for your statement. It's a Democrat hoax. I don't know what to make of this. I don't think he's buying it. And by the way, I've heard some folks in DC say the White House is not buying this story. And I don't think the brony thing makes it any better.
Entertained. I'm Kara from Lindell TV, Kara Cashnova, and I'm not fake news, just so you know. And everybody's talking about the pipe bomber over the weekend, the suspect that was taken into custody. I reported on Biden's kangaroo court for 4 years, and this is an important question to me. Everyone knows that J6 was a Fed's direction to set you and your supporters up. So my question is, what's your gut instinct about the new pipe bomber suspect taken into custody? Does your instinct tell you that he acted alone? And also, Mr. President, how do you feel about the lead prosecutor on the pipe bomber case? Jocelyn Ballantine is the same prosecutor that allegedly asked the J6er to lie to frame you for J6 when you did nothing wrong. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that question. It's sort of a statement, and I appreciate it very much. Jocelyn is being looked at. They all have to be looked at. What they're doing is so bad. This was a whole Democrat hoax. The whole thing was a Democrat hoax, and it's all being looked at. I appreciate that.
I don't even know what that means. Why was it not looked at beforehand? Again, this is the same argument. This is the reason why some of the stuff that I've done on social media has been so successful, pointing out the flaws and the weakness in this FBI, but I guess it goes broader to the DOJ end of it. That's not been my focus. You don't know who works for you. It took you 9 months, 11 months to get rid of people who did something 5 years ago, and you did it in the dumbest way possible, and now you're dealing with a lawsuit. Same story. You're putting on prosecutors who did the bad things, the people at the front line that were doing the thing that was atrocious. What did you expect? How did you hire people that couldn't tell you who are the people that are problematic? How did you let people that were in the agency that did all the bad things that you were claiming they did for years come in and then just say like, well, now we've turned over a new leaf? It's the meme. It's the Seraphin Show meme, reform, but with the same guys. You cannot do that. And that's what we keep pointing out here. So I have a funny footage because I can't be this serious for this long. And it is a really, like, this is a deadly serious topic to the point where people will go to prison for life or be killed over it. That's how serious this is to me. Allow me to show you what I think the meeting looked like before they did the interview of Brian Cole. So I think you got some FBI agents together. They got together at the conference table and they were like, how do we make this autistic, socially awkward, My Little Pony loving guy, how do we make him feel comfortable so that he can confess to us? And I think it looks something like this.
They come in, we treat it just like one of us, okay? That's one of us. Gobble, gobble, yeah, one of us. We accept them, one of us. Gobble, gobble, one of us. We accept them, one of us.
They're all bronies, right? They must all be bronies. They had to tell him, like, yeah, you know, I also like Apple Bloom or Apple Jack or whatever. We're all bronies here. How else? How else did that get done? And why did anyone think that was okay? Again, the mugshot shows him with the headphones on. This is not like he's about to go do a DJ party. He's in a federal detention. He's being interviewed by federal agents for the most terroristic thing done on January 5th, on January 6th. And still nobody can explain to me what the Capitol Police were doing on that day. How the hell did they find the bomb and then give up? What is his connection to Capitol Police, who clearly had way more knowledge than necessary? Even if it was just a BS training exercise, even if there's some jacked up, terrible, fake excuse, I'm not buying it. So in honor of the herd, and welcoming people into the Brony herd. We're going to do a special edition of FBI's, and you'll notice if you're missing on the visual, this is a great time to come to Spotify. We'll play a Spotify clip right real quick, a little Spotify ad. If you're not watching on Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, X, you're going to miss the FBI's that I added for this special edition of FBI's. I will play the song one more time. It's super catchy. This is like maybe my favorite song right now. This is Welcome to the Herd version, FBI's.
Yeah, honey, my baby. All into me. Yeah, homie, that be all to me. Yeah, ay. Welcome to my FBI's. A flippy eyeball surprise. I'm focused on catching bad guys. Just fly in the friendly skies. Don't be staring in my FBI's. I fired all the talented guys. Whip by my honey pot pies. Tweet into the bureau surprises. An agency, oh so rash. Investigating outcomes last. Announcing things real fast. That's my style, I'm Director Kash. Look into my FBI's. Black leather on my wee little thighs. Nookie as a mock up, jet flies. Loyalty to just one guy. Look into my FBI's. Crooked like most wanted guys. Tiny like pocket size. Hiding all the Epstein files. Yo, come and get on his private jet to a big event to see his girl set. Taxpayers lament, but she hot baby bad. She do not fret that his eyes be bent. He's chopped and cuffed, was locker stuff. Ain't calling Trump's bluffs, cause he gives him stuff. If he sound in a huff and you done had enough, then he say that's tough, he's about to get rough. Welcome to my FBI. My list of foes down inside. Some stopping bad terrorist guys. And none arrested, so maybe it's lies. Don't be mad at how I downsize. Had to snuff out some liberal spies. Now my caviar is always supplied. And all my people pray that I'm fired.
All right, I'm not going to play the whole song, but I do love that song. It seriously is probably my favorite jam right now, except maybe the one that we're going to end with, because seriously, I don't know how these guys walk themselves into this rake trap. They don't have enough information on this guy, and we're going to prove it. So anyway, stay tuned for that. It's not my story, but I've seen it. Pretty confident Brian Cole's not going to do it. I am going to be going on InfoWars later on today. Alex Jones threatened / begged / guilt shamed me and told me that I was ghosting him. I was not ghosting him. I was celebrating my daughter's 7th birthday over the weekend, so I didn't go and talk about this over there, but I've been meaning to go over and chat with Alex about it, so we'll do that. And I'm going to be on Joe Altman's program later on today, so if you're listening later on in the day, you can also check me out on Untamed, formerly the Conservative Daily. What else are we doing? We got a couple other things coming up. Anyway, it's going to be a busy week. It continues to be a busy week. And I made some contact with the mother of Brian Cole yesterday, and I'm hopeful that her son's attorney will talk to me as well. I'm injecting myself into this thing because I don't want to see an innocent man, regardless of their political ideology. I don't want to see the wrong people go to jail simply because these guys are screw-ups. And I think that's fair. Follow us, support the channel. We really appreciate all of you guys. Like the videos wherever you're at. If you're watching, you can see the static in the background. Rumble. Give us a like. We were 35th on the leaderboard yesterday. We're in the top 50, even though we are probably the smallest show on there in the top 40. X, we appreciate you guys. Unmonetized, but whatever. Watch it over there. If you want to join us on YouTube or on Rumble, that's where we make money on it. You can join us on Locals if you want to support us. You can subscribe over on Locals. You can subscribe on X. You can subscribe on YouTube, all these places. Anyway, check us out on the places you can. And I'll just say thank you so much for letting me do this thing. Somebody pointed out that Nick Fuentes doesn't have a real job because he sits behind a microphone and talks. And I was like, neither do I. Like, I know this is not a real job for real people. I have had a lot of real jobs in my life. I think that's why this is fun and interesting to me. But I recognize that this is not what regular people do ever. And the odds that I could sit here in front of an audience and have people care what I have to say about it, and the fact that I've got some experience that's interesting for other people to hear commentary on, including about freaking bronies. Should I put it up here? Including for bronies. that is illogical at every level, and it makes no sense that it would be the case that I could be sit here talking about freaking bronies. I have something that I found. My son was singing this last night. Some of you on the internet, in addition to being bronies and liking My Little Pony as dudes, do really weird things with your time. And I found another one of them, which I just think is inherently funny, and it's super catchy, and it was in my head before we started. So unfortunately, we're going to kick the FBI's song out of your head and end with a palate cleanse here, which is something about Dan Bongino. I don't know why someone sent me this, but when you guys do send me stuff that sticks in my head, I make sure that all of you suffer with me. God bless you. Have a fantastic day. This will be the last thing you hear, and we are out.
I want to be at the RNC. I want to see Patricia McCloskey. I want to scream for the GOP. I want to sit with Dan Bongino. I want to show the American flag. Eggs behind the toilet in grandma's basement. I want to ask him if he'll be my dad. I want to change my name to Nick Bongino. I want to tell him about the man in the stairs. He kinda looks like Dan Bongino. Grandma tries to tell me not to go down there, but I would be safe with Dan Bongino. I wanna be at the RNC. I wanna be like Dan Bongino. I wanna be at the RNC. I wanna be like Dan Bongino.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.